The storms that have led to floods across the country have left at least 11 people dead, hundreds of people homeless, damaging infrastructure and affecting electricity supply. The worst hit provinces include the Western Cape, the Eastern Cape and KZN. In light of the recent floods in Libya, which claimed the lives of more than 4,000 people, let's unpack how other countries are responding to these types of disasters and how South Africa can have future contingency plans in place. We're joined this morning by Dr. Wildred Lunga, who is the Chief Research Specialist in the Developmental, Capable and Ethical State Research Division at the HSRC. Dr. Lunga, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. And the examples on the continent just over the past few months, Dr. Lunga, are many. Libya just this month, Algeria as well, Ghana as well, widespread flooding on the African continent, and South Africa certainly also not left behind. The highest warning that the Weather Service could give was given in the Western Cape.
That's very true. And actually, when we talk of flood risk, it's not only a local issue, but a global issue.
Yeah.
And quite a number of countries are doing a lot, just like also South Africa is doing.
So, Dr. Lunga, when I was in conversation yesterday with the Mobility MEC in the Western Cape, I asked a question about how we can be more prepared for weather of this nature. And his response was that it's difficult to plan for the highest alert, which is level 9, issued by the SA Weather Service. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, we have different perceptions, but I am of the view that we can actually plan. Yeah, because there are a lot of things which can be done. For example, I know the provincial disaster management centers, they actually do what we call flood risk assessment. And this is done to identify actually and understand what happens when currently the floods happen, and also what we must envisage for the future. And we can also develop maps which actually show which areas are most likely to experience flooding. And we can also design responses actually to look at what is it that we are going to expect. So if we are able to do that, working together with other institutions like the weather services, we work with the local communities, we should be able actually to provide alerts, as long as the plans which we design are like looking into issues to do with pro-action, then we should be able to do that.
And what form would that take? Are we talking about evacuating people in particular areas ahead of time? Because as you say, we can predict the weather to a large extent, even if it is for the next 7 days, right? We can predict the kind of weather that we're having and the areas that would be most affected.
Yeah, true. We should be able to evacuate people as long as we've got the infrastructure. Like the other countries, you find they've got shelter where people can actually be moved to, so that when those areas which we have identified to be vulnerable, hence we can protect lives and move people in advance. And we should be able actually to raise awareness. And when we talk of awareness, it's not only done when we are approaching the season, when we know flooding is going to happen. It has to be continuous so that it is engraved in people's minds. And when that alert is issued, then people can be moved. And they understand why they are being moved to a shelter.
Right. It sounds like infrastructure is the big challenge we have with planning ahead for an eventuality like flooding in South Africa. Infrastructure insofar as moving people to shelters when they need to leave their homes because of flooding. And then drainage systems as well. That comes down to infrastructure challenges as well.
No, true. Because drainage systems can actually be blocked and so forth. But like I'm saying, if you work with all institutions, you work with the vulnerable people, they can assist in making sure that drainage systems are cleaned. They can also prepare where you can use sandbags and the other materials which can be applied during a disaster. It's not about waiting for institutions only, but it's also working with the people who are mostly vulnerable and are likely to be impacted by the flood.
Yeah. But the point is they wouldn't have access to, for example, sandbags, right? A lot of the kind of response that you're suggesting will depend on local governments.
Yes, that's why I'm saying local governments, the other institutions, councillors, but most important is to work with those people who are at risk, because they are the ones who should understand that whatever happens, their infrastructure, houses can be affected, their livelihoods can be affected, yes.
So how would you rate how we've handled flooding in our country over the past few years? KwaZulu-Natal comes to mind, devastating flooding in that province, which is already recovering from a whole range of issues, COVID-19, the riots of 2021, and then, of course, the flooding, and now in the Western Cape. How would you rate the way that those provinces have responded?
Look, we are a developing country, and we still have a number of challenges to address. So I would say we are fairly trying very hard to address. I can give you examples like the KwaZulu-Natal Disaster Management Center. They've even come up applying new technologies like geographic information systems to make sure that they record the areas which are mostly affected, so that next time when it happens, they can then monitor and see how best it was done and how best they can improve. So the country is tracking fairly well. Awareness is happening. So you will find that we are not very far from what other countries are doing. But like I indicated, we are a developing country. Resources are quite scarce. We still need a lot to do. We need to educate our people. We need also to train people who are in these institutions which deal with the disasters. So I would say fairly we are trying, but we still have a lot to do, as much as we are trying.
Yeah, I mean, those floods were devastating in KZN and the Eastern Cape in 2022. 440 people losing their lives, thousands of homes destroyed, roads damaged at a cost of almost 6 billion rand to the economy as well. So, Dr. Lunga, you're convening a conference on disaster and futures of Africa in Mozambique. It's happening in November of this year. Is South Africa going to be there? And you know, I suppose it's important that we are there. It's about learning lessons from how perhaps other countries are doing things better. And you talk about us being a developing country. It's important to learn lessons where other developing nations are doing perhaps a better job than we are.
Yeah, thank you for actually raising that. It's true, the Human Sciences Research Council is going to host a conference in Maputo, and the conference is actually on issues to do with climate change and futures, what the future is like. And the main theme for this year is early warning system. I can confide in you that South Africa is well represented. We have a lot of people from the CSIR. We have submitted abstracts, University of KwaZulu-Natal, Free State, and other individuals from other institutions. So yes, South Africa, I can confirm, is well represented, and we will be sharing also with other people from other countries who are going to be a part of the conference. So yeah, we are in the right direction, and we know we will also share what South Africa has been doing and also learn from others.
Yeah, and it's very, very timeless. Climate change and early warning systems. Let's hope we do much, much better in the future insofar as this kind of adverse weather is concerned. Dr. Wildred Lunga, Chief Research Specialist at the HSRC. Thanks for joining us this morning.